Welcome to the meeting of the Oak Hill School Board for project hearing and second preliminary determination hearing. This item is for the board to hold project preliminary hearing on proposed project. No one in the audience today is going to be speaking. After a presentation by the administration and supervisors, there will be an opportunity for the public to make comments about the project. At the hearing, we'll ask each person to limit their comments to 3 minutes. The notice of this preliminary determination hearing was published as legally required. The first preliminary determination hearing was held on March 9th, 2026. And at this time, I'll ask the Superintendent Hardman explain the purpose of this hearing.
Pursuant to Indiana Code 20-26-7-37, before a school corporation may spend more than $1 million to build, repair, or alter a school building that will be financed by lease or bonds, it must hold a public hearing at which explanations of potential value of the project to the school corporation and community are given. Similarly, pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-20-3.5, a school corporation must hold 2 public hearings and adopt a resolution to preliminarily determine to issue bonds or enter a lease for a project which has a total project cost in excess of a non-controlled project. These public hearings and the adoption of resolutions are the very beginning of the legal process. These resolutions establish the maximum financial terms for the proposed project.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the superintendent again about the process of determining and communicating the project to the community and the need for the project.
On last Monday night, when we had our first hearing, I explained a little bit about the facility study that was started back at the beginning of 2022-2023 school year. We contracted with Gibraltar. They went through all of our buildings. They basically came up with an entire list of things that throughout these next 10 to 20 years, we're going to need to be focusing on as items that will likely need to be repaired, replaced, renovated to keep our buildings in working order. Another kind of part of why we're doing this project now is that there were recent changes in state legislation that limit a school corporation's ability to issue bonds if its debt service tax rate exceeds 70 cents, unless the bond is approved through a public referendum. So what that means is right now our tax rate is at 0.6999. Our projections are showing that next year that tax rate, without us doing anything different, without us taking out any more or having a higher levy or anything like that, our tax rate will be affected because of the way they're calculating the net assessed value. So what we are doing here today is we are going through this process because if we were to try to do this next year when our rate would go above 70 cents, it would require us to go to a public referendum to take out a bond. That would pose another problem for us next year as well, because now you're only able to do that every 2 years. So if we didn't do it in November, it wasn't on the ballot in November to do a bond, we'd have to wait until 2028 to be able to take out a bond. So what we are doing here, our current debt tax rate is 0.669, and projections show that we may exceed that threshold next year due to legislative changes with how net assessed value of property will be calculated. Because of this change, the board is beginning the process to establish what is called a unified project in the amount of up to $10 million. This does not mean that the district plans to borrow $10 million at this time. The purpose of starting this process is to preserve the district's ability to access funding in the future if a significant facility need or unexpected expense arises within the next 5 to 10 years. These improvements could include site, roofing, paving, and HVAC improvements. and the purchase of buses, equipment, or technology. So it's a wide range of things that we'd be able to use that money for. The process required by the state is the same whether the district issues $1 in bonds or up to 10 million, which is why the board chose to establish the project at the level to provide flexibility moving forward. Overall, the unified project simply gives the board and the school corporation financial flexibility and planning capacity so that if a significant need arises in the coming years, the district has options available without needing to start the entire process from the beginning and having to put this on a ballot in 2028, or waiting to put it on a ballot in 2028.
Our municipal advisor, Belvia Gray and Baker Tilly, was at the first preliminary determination meeting last week, and Dr. Hardman will share a summary of the information that they provided at that meeting on how the proposed project will be financed, as well as information about the effect on the typical property taxpayer.
All right, so Belvia when she was here last Monday, she shared a presentation with us that, as she walked through it, this first page just shows what our current debt service and lease rental payments are right now. So if you notice in 2026, our total debt payments are about 3.5 million. That's where we want to stay. So as you kind of see, each year we have debt coming off. So with doing this bond right now, or actually going through the process of doing it right now, we may take out a bond yet this year, or we can wait until next year to do it. But as you can see, as you move down on the list of each year what we would owe, if we want to keep it around that 3.3, 3.4 threshold of levy, we'll want to either readjust our debt or take out more debt to keep it there. I think the goal that we have, or the board has, as we've looked at debt over the next 20 years, is keeping that threshold the same, where we do not change the levy, which then the tax rate will change a little bit only because of the net assessed value, but we want to keep our levy the same and then work within those means with our debt service. So you can see here too, it shows the debt and the different colors that we have, which aligns to the previous slide, just in a bar graph, so it's a little bit easier to read. You can kind of see that debt falling off each year. So right now we don't have any capacity to take out a bond, but once we pay off some of our current debt, we would have more capacity moving forward. So like I said, right now we're going through the process just to give us that ability, but we won't do any as of today. We won't take any. As of July 15th, it would open up some capacity for us. So after July 15th would be the soonest we would be able to take out a bond on this particular unified project. It gives a maximum parameters there of 10 million. And again, that is the most that we could take out. That's not saying that we would, that's not saying we will. It just gives us that flexibility in the future if we would need it. You see that there? The board is seeking to authorize for up to 10 million in total projects. That does not mean all of that debt would be issued at once. Instead, we expect to move forward with multiple issuances over time, aligning borrowing with actual project needs. Each issuance would be limited to no more than a 20-year repayment term, which helps ensure we are not passing costs on longer than the useful life for the project or the facilities we're improving. A key priority throughout this planning process has been maintaining our debt service levy, at approximately the current 3.3 to 3.4 million level. The financial plans were built specifically around that objective. So our goal is not to raise taxes. It's not to raise or try to bring in more money than we already are. We want to keep it at that same levy. It's also important to note that the school corporation does not control assessed valuation. Changes in state property tax law and market conditions are expected to reduce or slow the growth of net assessed value, which can affect tax rates even when levies stay the same. Those realities were fully contemplated in the preparation of the financial plan. The projections were intentionally conservative so that we can move forward in a way that's fiscally responsible and mindful of our taxpayers. Overall, this approach allows the corporation to address facility needs while maintaining stability and predictability in our debt service. You can also note that there is financial information required to be provided by law that can be shared upon request. And so that also is in your folder here, that if you have anybody asking about, or tell them to come my way, and then this is the information we would provide to them, basically showing what this particular unified project would do to our debt.
I'm skimming through the participation persons. There's no one here. Appreciate your time and the interest in the projects in the future of our community. Please note this is just the first step in the legal process. The board will continue to work with the administration and its professionals to look for efficiencies to conserve tax dollars while meeting our educational needs. Dr. Harvey, would you please summarize the project resolution?
Yes, the first item that needs to be approved is the project resolution. A project resolution is required when the school is planning to spend more than $1 million per building. It contains the estimated hard and soft costs of construction and the costs of issuance, and establishes the total project cost. It also contains the estimated tax impact. So you can see here, just kind of explains exactly what we just talked about, with what the project will be, what it can be used for, what the maximum cost of the project could be, and then how that affects the current levy and what our current tax rate is of 0.6999.
And Chair, just for clarification, moving forward, every time we issue off of this, we'd have to have the 2 public hearings.
Yeah.
Still comes before the board.
Yeah.
We still maintain the control. It's not a blank check.
No.
Our approval.
No.
Thank you.
No, it just starts that process
Gotcha.
of giving us the ability to go out later
Gotcha. Okay.
and
Could I have a motion and a second to adopt the project resolution?
So moved. Second.
Any discussions that anyone has? All those in favor, right hand. 7. And Dr. Harvey, would you please summarize the preliminary determination resolution?
yes, so the next item on the agenda for approval is the preliminary determination resolution. That is required when a school is planning to finance more than a certain amount for a given facility. It contains the total project cost, maximum annual payment, and lease term, and other financial terms such as estimated principal amount and tax impact. So same thing, you can see here, where it was advertised, what we could use the money for during the time frame that we would have to, and again, there is no set time frame. It's just anytime now or after July 15th, moving forward. So our first hearing was held on the 9th. Our second one is held tonight. Just kind of talks through what our what our percentage of debt is when you look at the total debt that we have compared to our school corporation and what we owe for that. We can't take out more than 10 million. Potential interest costs, that would again be if we did the entire thing, it would be almost 8 million on that if we did a 10 million, 20 years. But hopefully we're not going to go there. So you can see there that we want to keep it around the 3.3 in the debt levy. And our current rate is the 0.6999. The total maximum tax rate that could change to over time would be the 0.89. And again, that would be due to net assessed value in order to keep that same levy amount. So it has the table there to show you what that looks like.
Could I have a motion and a second to adopt the preliminary determination resolution?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. 7. Dr. Harlan, could you please summarize the reimbursement resolution?
All right, and then the last thing on the agenda for approval tonight is the declaration of official intent to reimburse expenditures. This is not something new that we've done here. With our previous project, we also did this, and this basically just gives us the ability to reimburse the school corporation if we have from our bond proceeds for any cash which we might spend on the project prior to the closing of the bonds. It's required by federal tax law in order to preserve the school corporation's ability to reimburse itself. So what that's basically meaning is we have any costs prior to the bond closing that we pay out of corporation funds, we're able to reimburse the school corporation for that with this resolution. This resolution gives us permission to do that if those are eligible costs that can be taken out of the bond.
Could I have a motion and a second to adopt the reimbursement resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. 7.
So if there's nothing else tonight, that concludes our second preliminary determination hearing. So we're able to adjourn the meeting.
Do we need a motion?
Yep.
Need a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.